Welcome, everyone. My name is David Carnes. I'm the founder and chairman and chief evangelist of OpFocus. And today we have an amazing panel to talk about Rev-Ops role in scaling SaaS ARR. So thank you for joining us, spending your lunch hour with us. During today's session, we absolutely welcome questions. There is a Q&A box in the bottom of your screen. We will get to as many of the questions as we can during the time slot that we have. Since we have three panelists, we're just so thrilled to be talking about this topic with them, but we do welcome your questions. So on today's call, we have MacKenzie, the VP of Global Revenue Operations from Brightcove. So Brightcove offers cloud-based platforms to publish and distribute digital media. So they're known for video. They have about 700 employees. They've been a publicly traded company since 2012, and the stock is up about 4 times since last April. That's kind of amazing, Kate. Welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, glad you're here. We also have Justin Donlon with us, who's the VP of Process Innovation and Analytics at CarGurus. CarGurus, in case you didn't know, is an online automotive destination that assists users in contacting sellers and in comparing listings for new and used automobiles. So they're about 900 employees, and they've been public since 2017. You know, Justin, what's going on? The stock has only doubled since last April.
Hey, David, what can we say? People still love buying cars.
Yes, we're all still buying cars. We also have Heidi Thompson on today's call. Heidi is the VP of Revenue Operations at SecurityScorecard, which is a platform used for predicting and remediating potential security risks. SecurityScorecard has about 250 employees and is a Series D funded company. Welcome, Heidi.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so glad that you've all joined us today. And note to everybody on today's call, we've all known each other for a lot of years, and it's great fun to be on a call together like this. All right, so first question for the group. So RevOps, we've seen this thing called RevOps emerge. Most of us knew about sales ops earlier in our career, and we thought we were headed and we were going to just sail through our careers and retire as heads of sales operations. And this thing called RevOps emerged in the last number of years. SiriusDecisions defines it as the combination of marketing automation, sales operations, sales enablement, and customer success. I'm curious within your organizations how that you define this. Perhaps we could start with Kate.
Sure. So it's been a real evolution at my company. Ironically, last week, my title actually changed to revenue operations. It has been, yeah, I know. It had been sales operations, and but last week it changed. And when the structure that we have today, I report into the chief revenue officer, which is kind of what is driving that change in our company. We do have a marketing department that marketing operation lives there, but there is an extremely close relationship and partnership that we have with our marketing team. We are really true partners, and we work on things together. And then under the sales organization, we have revenue operations, and we have customer success, and then we have our sales team. And within revenue operations, I should say, even I'm mixing up sales ops and RevOps, it's so new, is that we also have sales enablement that lives on my team. So it's been an evolution to get to this point. We're kind of still in this hybrid space where how you defined it is we're not quite there yet, but that's kind of the structure that we have today. But again, it's all reliant on really close partnerships across not only marketing, but finance and all the other departments.
Justin, how about for your organization?
Yeah, great. So I'll tell you where I fit in first. I'm the VP of Process Innovation and Analytics. For us, that means 3 teams. It's enterprise applications, so all of the systems that are used to support our marketing and sales teams. And then it's analytics engineering, and then IT systems and IT help desk. And my team rolls up into the engineering organization. But there is also an EVP of revenue, and within that revenue organization, there's sales ops, marketing ops, B2B marketing, sales enablement, etc. And so while I wouldn't say that we've got a strictly defined RevOps function, it's clearly the combination of those different roles are working closer and closer together. And then what's happening is that from a systems side, we're blending further upstream, not just being service takers from those organizations and saying, what do you need? Yes, we can help you set up users, put a system in place, etc. But we're really trying to help drive process innovation within those parts of the organization. So I think we're also on the evolution of the RevOps evolution, and it's so clear that certain individuals work their way into those RevOps functions, which is really the glue I find between the different functions. And we're seeing that emerge also. There'll be, a few individuals who are just the key people to go to for blending marketing ops and sales ops, or launching a new product and making sure that it's working through the funnel. So definitely making great strides in the definition of what RevOps looks like at CarGurus.
Wow, that's amazing. How about for you, Heidi?
I report to the CFO, and when I started 4 months ago, the position was actually for sales ops. And I told them if I were to move forward, I would like the title to be revenue operations, because I want to be accountable for the full funnel. I did not want to be siloed into this little portion when it's so important to bridge the gaps between the entire customer journey. So everyone was happy to hear that. It worked out well. And then my team is made up of deal desk, BI analyst, Salesforce system administrator, sales ops analyst. We cover CS ops and partner and alliance ops as well.
All right, so I think what we can take away from question number one is that there are a lot of shapes and sizes to this thing called RevOps, and that it's still evolving within each of our organizations. Well, great, thank you. For a second question, we thought to get to the heart of the matter and the heart of today's call. So what is RevOps' role in scaling a SaaS company? Who should we have start with this question today?
I've got a couple of thoughts I'd love to throw out for this one, because I think it's such an interesting one. Even if you don't necessarily have that RevOps role well articulated, there are such clear needs for it. And we went through an exercise a few months ago where we spoke about the concept of operational capabilities. And operational capabilities are simply the things that we need to do to get our product to market and to satisfy our customers. And one of the ways that we measured our operational capabilities is using the term process maturity. How mature are the processes that we go through to bring a product to market? And I think that that's where RevOps becomes so key, because within sales ops, we might have well-defined processes. Within marketing ops, we've got processes. Within our systems team, we've got processes. But while we were preparing, I made a little doodle over here, which hopefully you can see on the screen. And it's the Venn diagram of marketing ops, sales ops, systems, etc. And where I think RevOps becomes so key is in the overlap of those Venn diagrams, because that's where it's actually very difficult to blend these different processes together. It's in the handoff from one team to another, or one part of the funnel to the other. And so I think it's so crucial that RevOps injects itself into those overlaps and articulates, establishes, and puts together repeatable processes that will really help a company to scale.
Well, I love that Venn diagram.
Yeah, very high tech.
I'm jealous. I didn't think of drawing before this, but I think one of the key words you said was articulating. And if you don't have a true definition of what success criteria is, you're most likely going to fail, because people know what they want, but until you draw that picture out and identify those gaps, you're not truly aligned. And without speaking the same vernacular and having that alignment and articulation, as you mentioned, it's so important.
Yeah, we went through, as we were trying to say, all right, give us the different layers or levels of process maturity. The very first entry level into process maturity is that processes or success is accomplished by the heroics of individuals, which is great. Everybody loves a hero, but a good hero always dies at the end of the story. It's not sustainable. What we want is a process that's repeatable, and that we can track and measure it and then come back to and improve it after time. So I love the idea of just saying, tell me what the process looks like, and let's make sure that we're actually following the steps in those processes.
I think to add on to that, my team is involved in a lot of company-wide projects. So I think we have a wide visibility, and we help connect the dots in between for other departments. So when we see something, we're like, oh, that's going to have an impact on product marketing, or this is going to have an impact on finance. And we are bringing everyone together, because if you think about revenue operations, we have sales enablement, we have technology, we have analysts, we have all of these pieces, and we are used to running tight operations and having KPIs, Justin, just like you talked about. So, and running projects. And so we're used to doing that. So when we see something is happening, we can recognize it because we're in a lot of those meetings, and we connect the dots and bring everyone together to be like, okay, here's what we're going to do. You're participating this way. Here's how you're participating. What are we missing? It's, working together, again, having those really tight partnerships, but we are always running something down for the sales team because there's a lot of process there. And so I feel like we bring those skills to the other teams and are able to connect people together based on what we're seeing, because anything that has impact on the sales team, we're involved in. So we're able to pick up on those areas where there may be a gap or an opportunity there. And I think that's what can really help scale, is making sure you're communicating and bringing those people in who are impacted so that you can have success.
Yeah. Kate, one of the things that we've done over the course of the last 6 months or so, which has been so helpful, and it sounds so obvious, I know this, but we've got a weekly cross-functional meeting that's got representatives from a huge number of groups: finance, sales ops, the revenue teams, the product teams, all the IT and the systems teams, the analytics teams. It's a very expensive meeting because there's a lot of people in it, and there's never a fixed agenda. Every week we have a look at it and say, all right, what is the key agenda for today? And it could be reviewing a project, the launch of a new product, reviewing the roadmaps at the beginning of the year, any risks that have emerged as of something, because of something in the market. But it's great to have that weekly scheduled get together with all these different cross-functional players, where you can, in that RevOps role, start to say, all right, are you guys aware? Are you all aware of this? And for some people, it'll be more relevant than it will be for others. But it's that role of just communicating across a diverse group of teams and departments is amazing.
That communication is absolutely key and pivotal to alignment. So I couldn't agree more. Those meetings are so important. We really are the connective tissue that keeps all those departments together. It's part of what we sign up for.
Yeah. It's, it's interesting, as a consulting shop that does a lot of work on systems, we'll often be introduced into an organization and they'll share growth goals for us. We're very curious what the growth goals are. And someone will say, it'll be a bad year if we don't double. And, we'll then pivot and look at the tech stack. And, there are some cases where it's kind of obvious that you can't make it. You can't get there from here because some of the tools in the tech stack, some of the investments are outdated. The foundation isn't set properly. It needs to be reset. We need to start weaving in new tools and that sort of thing. And I think, when you're a hammer, the world looks like nails. We think, at some level about the impact of systems, but as you guys are talking about, clearly the data process, things like reporting, that cross-departmental communication. I think one of the things that we've seen, for a lot of years is we've wanted ops to have a seat at the table. Justin, I remember talking about that, a number of years ago with you, just the importance of that idea of ops being included in decisions, ops understanding the why for a lot of the decisions, and then being part of the strategy, because we can support so many important initiatives.
Yeah, and it requires such a mindset from a senior leadership, because often an ops role like that, it really feels like overhead, and it's not a sales role, so it doesn't necessarily own a number, and it doesn't necessarily own a number, or it's not a product role, so it doesn't own a product, nor is it a IT role. Sometimes without fully understanding the importance of it, it feels like overhead. And I think that the existing leaders, sales leaders, product leaders, IT leaders, etc., really have to make a case for the fact that role is so important, because it's going to drive the cohesion between those different functions.
Looks like
I've actually always been, sorry, David.
No, go ahead, Heidi. I'm sorry.
I've always been tied to the revenue numbers, both new and renewal, as part of owning that whole funnel. And I actually think everyone should have skin in the game, so they know, particularly with sales and me reporting to the CFO and not being to the CRO, I'm your partner. We were in it, we're working together, we're all going for the same goal, and I am paid on that same goal. So I actually think that is a little bit of an advantage I have.
Looks like we've had a couple of questions. Oh, come in. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Justin.
No, I wanted to ask Heidi if that was your positioning or if that was the default in the companies that you came into. Because I don't know that I've seen it frequently as it sounds like you have. Or if you've said, if I'm going to succeed, I want skin in the game and I want my compensation tied to revenue. And I think it's a bold, great move.
Yep, and I would say on both sides, I've seen it both ways where if I've wanted more tied to it or less, but no matter what, you should always have some part of it. And I think every
Right.
company should mandate that. And my area of expertise tends to be pre-IPO. So as long as everyone's going to be game for that.
Yeah, and that should be a webinar in and of itself, sort of those phases of evolution, getting ready to go public, to go out the door and all the steps really, we'll have to have you guys back and dig into that topic. We do have two questions that I think are really good and relevant. One of them is, since, we have folks on the call that are single RevOps, experts in their company, sort of jack of all trades. And then we have folks that have large teams, and that's part of a normal evolution. So this really relevant question is, how do you define your team's groups? Example, enablement systems, ops leads. So I know, Justin, you've got a very sizable team. Some of that structure you inherited. And how do you think about how the team is organized?
So again, my team, I won't take too long on this question because my team is not in RevOps. It really supports the RevOps function. But we've got and the way we do it is our enterprise applications team, which is made up of Salesforce developers, Marketo developers, etc., also has a very strong product management mindset, which I know we're going to talk about later in the call. And so we've got a few managers who are really link arms with other parts of the revenue organization to make sure that we're working well with them. But I think I'll be interested to hear what the other panelists have to say about the team structure.
Yeah, how about you, Kate?
Sure.
So how do you define your team's groups?
So we have, on my team, I have sales enablement, which is newer. That's not something that I inherited when I came in. So that was something that we were able to get, which is huge. We had an analyst and a manager of sales operations who handled everything. I mean, it was kind of like a catch-all position. That's forecasting, that's comp plans, that's any sort of analysis, dashboards, reporting. They kind of covered everything. And then we have a systems person, which I also was able to get. So the sales enablement and the systems person, because we all know that if you own Salesforce, it's not just your teams, it's anyone that's connecting into that with other applications and software that you have to play a part in. So we just were able to prove that it was too much and we needed someone dedicated to that. Plus, like, how do you keep on top of all of the upgrades and making sure that you're continually looking at vendors? There's new ones popping up all the time, and now we're seeing real consolidation. So to make sure you have the right ones. So that's kind of how my team is made up. I've been able to add 2 more people, which has been fantastic. And something that also is great is that we support a global team, and we have a sales operations person in every single office, which is, I mean, I can't tell you, I've been sales ops for a long time, and that's never, ever been the case. It's been like 2 or 3 of us in the headquartered office. So that has also been fantastic. And I feel bad telling you guys this because I've been in your place. I know what it's like, and you can fight and fight and fight, and it's really hard to prove, but we have a case system that we use that we built in Salesforce. And that's what's enabled us to get to this point, is we're able to prove it's like, all right, company, you are asking us to do all of these things. We only have this much manpower. So if you want us to be able to take on more, then we need to have more people. And we've been using cases to kind of help us measure that. But so that's my team setup. And luckily we're global. And I feel bad for sharing this because I know it's really hard. I've been there.
Yeah. Heidi, did you want to?
Yeah, we do the same. We use Jira, and we actually log our time and type of where we're spending. The type of reporting or integration or whatever need it comes by. So the one thing I've noticed being newer to SecurityScorecard is that operations, like we've seen almost everywhere, it becomes a catch-all. And I'm really trying to delineate and focus each role and responsibilities so that people essentially also don't burn out. There is so much to do always, as we all know, in hypergrowth. And in order to make the best impact and the right impact and the most productivity and scalability, you do need to make sure that you have your top three. You focus on those, and then everything else will be secondary. And I know it's so much easier said than done, but we really do try to keep, all right, BI requests, go to this person. Salesforce integrations, go to this person. Anything quote related goes to this person. And I think it helps streamline the communication internally, as well as just the roles and responsibility. They know what they can and can't do, and it enables and empowers the individual on your team as well.
Yeah. Melissa asked the question, how do you justify the RevOps expense? And I think it's related to, both of you sharing ticketing systems to at least, be able to measure, wow, it was a big uptick recently because of blah, blah, blah. And justifying that next headcount when you sit down with the CFO the next time, how to go fight.
I also recommend Googling. There is so much data, like Gartner has like a whole report out now. If you just Google revenue operations, there's so many stats out there that you can kind of take and look at your own company, or just use those stats because they're so powerful of how that ties to the increase in revenue. So don't be afraid to Google, and there's stats out there that you can use to help prove your case. I've done that in the past.
That's right. Salesforce publishes how many system admins you should have, actually, and what type, senior or junior, per the number of users you have.
There are also companies out there like OpEx Engine, which is run by Lauren Kelly, where she does a benchmark survey for SaaS companies that can help with those kinds of metrics. Well, great. Why don't we shift to the next topic, which is related to your roadmaps. So big topic here. When we think of a RevOps roadmap at OpFocus, we're thinking of interviews with many departments. We're thinking of something that looks like 9 to 18 months out into the future, that's keeping track of what are the biggest goals of the company, what are the strategies toward that, and then how can RevOps support that. It's a big topic because a lot of times, we have the question about, oh, can you share your roadmap? And we sort of start with this pile of tech debt, but I know all of us want to get out free from the pile of tech debt and work on the big stuff. How do each of you define your roadmaps? Maybe Heidi, do you want to start with that?
Sure. I try to always keep the 90-day the most clear and defined, because if you're changing your 90-day frequently, something else is amiss. But after that, I have a 6-month and a year. I'd love to say I have a 2-year right now, but I don't, because one, being very new to it, to this role at SecurityScorecard, the amount of tech debt, you're still trying to isolate and figure out which ones will make the most impact first. So whether it be implementing CPQ, which we're just about to kick off, or kicking off the integration with Zendesk, because we've had all the siloed systems, trying to create the 360 view of the customer. I prioritize those, estimate the delivery time. I'm a huge fan of under promise, over deliver, and then build from there. So a bottoms up model, and as well as a tops down. And then if you want me to do all this to impact, I'll need +1 headcount here. So I actually try to use it for a hiring advantage.
The negotiation begins. That's great. How about you, Kate?
Actually, really similar to Heidi. So my team, we do case reviews where we can see where the most of our cases are coming, and we try to look at those so that if there's items we need to fix, then we're putting those onto the roadmap. We kind of look at it quarterly, but we have 5 quarters out most of the time. Typically it's like the next 3. And then we kind of have this like list that we know that we have to get to, but we're not really sure exactly when. It's like not on fire yet, but it's something we have to think about. We work with our sales leadership team, our marketing teams, our finance teams. We kind of know those hot topics that we have to either, take care of now, or it's something we have to address next quarter. So we talk to the group. It's the same thing, tops up, top down, bottom up, same as Heidi. And it's really about, we know that there's things that are going to pop up, and it's about managing the expectations. And the same thing is like, we can add this on, but that means that this item will be taken off and we'll have to move it out by 6 weeks or something. Or, if you'd like us to do it all, then, is there someone else in the company that can help us take care of one of these, or can, do we hire? So, it's really important to, be flexible, because we know there's always things that are coming up, but you want to stick to it as best as you can. And make sure that Justin or Heidi was talking about this earlier, is that, we were so used to being ticket takers, and I'm really trying to move us into a strategic position, because these are really important and they impact not just our sales team, but they impact the other teams as well. So that's, we have a team meeting at the beginning of every quarter where we review what we had listed and we put together project plans, and that's kind of how we continue throughout the year. And we have 2 weekly team meetings to ensure we're on track on each of those. We discuss anything that has to push for various reasons, and who we have to communicate out to based on any changes.
Oh, that's great. How about in your organization, Justin?
Yeah, we haven't, our different teams have an annual roadmap. So we've got a pretty good lineup for what the rest of the year looks like. From a systems perspective, we've got something incredibly overwhelming, but also really exciting for anybody that's ever had to rebuild an enterprise application stack. Unless you're a consultant, if you're a full-time employee at a company, this is typically a once in a lifetime opportunity where you get to rebuild what you have. So we've got an 18-month roadmap ahead of us from a systems perspective, where we are rebuilding our systems based on where the organization is going and growing to. I mean, it's an opportunity to just take a big, what do you call it?
Sledgehammer.
Sledgehammer to the technical debt and say, enough with you. We're rebuilding with a business process mindset first, using all the latest and greatest that the tech has to offer. It's a well-socialized program within the organization. We've got great executive buy-in. So that's a big 18-month project that we're making really good progress on. So it's an exciting one for us.
Yeah, that's great. And, I think what we've all encountered in our personal lives, we've seen a road that we drive on every day, beautifully repaved, and then a week later it's being dug up for a new gas pipe or something. You go, why on earth? And we want to avoid that within our systems by putting together a thoughtful roadmap, and it includes things such as the perceived priority, the level of effort, but then also that sequencing, which is one of the harder things, especially when we're talking about a rich tech stack. One of the harder things to think through and try to get right, but still a worthy effort to try to avoid paving and digging as opposed to digging and paving.
Yeah, that's one of my biggest fears, is that in the process of rebuilding, we're rebuilding with tech debt in place. You're like, no, are we sure we're doing the right thing here?
One thing I'd like to add, it's a little bit tactical and it addresses one of the questions I saw pop up, to help justify to hire. If you know your company's revenue goals for the next year, you can back into, okay, what's our ASP? How do we reach that goal? What are the number of transactions? What do we need to do to support that? And you can really back into, all right, my team's capacity is X. Here we need to reach Y, figure out how to get to Z. So there are other math data-driven ways that you can prove it.
The other thing I wanted to mention too on roadmap is making sure you align to your company goals. Is whenever we review what we have on our roadmap, it's always like, do these align to our company objectives? Do they align to the sales team objectives? And then my boss's 3 favorite words that we measure everything against is clarity, consistency, and alignment. So as long as we are matched on those items, like that's how we get the stamp of approval. So when something, there's always those projects that come in from left field. We always are saying, all right, do they align to the company goals? Do they align to our sales goals? And is there consistency, alignment, and consistency, clarity. Thank you. So that also helps us too to manage that roadmap.
So we had a question come in the 18-month pipeline. How do you get buy-in on the sequencing? So we all nodded our head about the sequencing issue. It sounds like it probably jumps back to all of you talking about clarity and communication with the other departments to generate that understanding, so that your project is very, very important, but this other thing has to happen first, sort of logically. Is that what you've encountered?
Absolutely. I hate to say it, but a lot of what Kate said earlier, if it's a fire now, you have to address it now. And the other things are a little bit more ambiguous or in the gray bucket, you're going to put it later. I think anybody who's in a hyper-growth company, you just have to be agile and you have to know and identify what outcomes you need to reach, but you have to address the biggest fire first. And then when that fire is out, ensure proactively that it won't happen again, so you can properly tackle the next one. What you don't want to do is 50% something that's going to bite you in the butt later.
Yeah, that's right.
So go ahead, Justin.
No, you go.
Just don't put duct tape on it. Don't make it an automated or a manual process. You can get into such trouble if you just manually solve things, and all of a sudden you have 50 reports coming at you once a month that you have to manually update because you didn't solve it properly or go to the root cause. That's what I've seen in the past too, is people just are like, oh, this will be a fix for it. And there wasn't a realization of what that root cause is and a fix of it, so that, or an automation of it, so you just never have to think about it again. And not everything falls into that bucket, but it's to have that mindset when you're trying to work on those items.
The other thing that we've done in terms of sequencing things or prioritizing things, I think we could say, is we're a service organization. In other words, an IT organization or a Salesforce development team, even a RevOps team many times serves to exist the needs of the business. But what I like to say is that we're a service organization with an agenda. We're not just waiting for service, but we have a very clear agenda, which we're communicating clearly and effectively, and not just communicating it, but defending it. So one of the things that we've been able to do with the partnership of our stakeholders is we've said, all right, we've got a certain amount of capacity. We reserve the right to use X percentage of our capacity for technical debt or these system projects or overhauls or whatever it is. And so we've communicated that, and that's now very well accepted. Not everybody loves it, but it's part of the deal, is that we reserve the right to use 30% or whatever percentage we pick for doing the right thing for the future.
Oh, that's great. Why don't we shift to the next topic? How do we keep everyone going in the same direction? So I think this is related to what we were just talking about, but are there any other points that you might add to just, once you define that roadmap, keeping everyone moving forward? Kate, any thoughts? Go ahead, Heidi.
Go ahead, Heidi. Go ahead.
It's just so top of mind for me right now. So definitions, it's crazy how you can work somewhere and people just have different definitions for things. So I think proper documentation, having those definitions lined out, everyone's on the right page, same page, right from the start, is so important. It's just a big one that I think is so often overlooked and easily forgotten, and people assume other people know, but especially because we are in the most cross-functional roles, we should never, ever assume anything. I mean, people in engineering versus people in marketing, their minds work differently. It's why they're both good at what they do. And creating that common ground is just vital to start anything.
Yeah, I love that. One of the other things I'd add is we're harping on about communication. And our communication is typically around what we're doing, but we also need to be very clear in communicating what we're not doing. And so, because that's the way you meet expectations, because you can say very clearly, this is what we're doing, everybody agreed, this is what we're doing, this is the way we're going. And then, 6 weeks later, you might get, but I thought it was assumed that we were also doing this. And so I think to be clear about the ins and the outs, which takes a very different proactive style of communication, is also crucial to make sure we're all going in the same direction.
Yeah, I think Heidi brought this up earlier, is defining roles. When it sounds like we both had the same experience when we came onto our teams, is that there were catch-all positions, and having to really define those. Because it can be really gray lines between some marketing positions, some finance positions on people, and at one point you could have helped out with something, and then it just permanently becomes that person's one of their tasks. And I think it's clearly defining it. And then between teams, it's just over communicate. You have to over communicate with people, confirm, and also thinking of others when you're in those meetings that you're like, oh, this is going to absolutely impact them. I have to let them know that this is coming. And it's, that's what builds good partnerships, is saying, I was in this meeting and this came up. Do you know about this? Are you aware that this is happening? And, can you tell me more about it? Because I think it also will impact me. And it just really thinking the best of everyone you work with. Is I know we can get into these tracks where it's like, oh, well, this marketing person just cares about this lead thing, and I'm in sales and they just care about selling and they don't care about, what I'm doing. And it's just really making sure you're thinking the best of people. We have this thing at Brightcove, one team, #one team. And it's something that we really have come to embody. And we want the best for everyone. We enjoy working with the people we do. And it's really important to think of those other people, and not just stay in the silos. You have to break that down, because it just works better for everyone else. And if we're all, over communicating, we all understand our roles, then we're going to all be driving in that same direction.
I love the coming back to our process maturity topic from earlier. Our teams did a book study last year and they read the Checklist Manifesto, which is a great book. I mean, yeah, you know what it's, I mean, it's just about a checklist, but checklist, the humble checklist is surprisingly powerful. And I am just so thrilled at how the team has taken the notion of a checklist to heart. And anytime they have come across an experience where somebody's expectations weren't met or there was a miscommunication, the team does a quick retro and says, right, how do we make sure that we improve this process? So this actually happened last month, and the team said, all right, what we need is a checklist to help us make sure that we communicate to everybody in a consistent fashion. So the team put together a communication checklist for anything that we're working on. So now they actually say, right, we've got a new topic or a new sprint or a new project or whatever. How do we make sure that we've communicated to everybody and they've got a checklist that they run through, so they don't have to rely on in the moment or a reflection or, who do we need to talk to about this? They go to their checklist and they work through it. I think just, again, it comes down to repeatable processes that you can refine and improve over time.
All right. Something I'm really curious about, just knowing the level and depth that each of you thinks about these topics. What are trends that you're seeing and how do they impact your role? So it's a new year, 2021. We've got some uncertain amount of time with the pandemic left to deal with. Businesses are growing and evolving. Got to go execute on the new year's plan. What are the trends that you're seeing in RevOps?
So a trend that I've been seeing, which I love, is that you typically in sales ops or revenue ops have to fight to be a part of meetings. Is you hear about something and you're like, we should be involved in that. Now we are a requirement. Projects and product launches and things that are happening, we actually have to sign off on them now, which is fantastic. It's, it's something that we all hope would happen and just didn't think it would happen this soon. But that has been something that I'm seeing that really impacts how our team moves forward. And it comes back to that communication that we've been talking about in the partnerships with the other teams is we've been connecting the dots for so many years to bring people together. And now we're kind of in that seat where things can't really go forward until we've been involved and we've signed off on it. So that's a trend that I've been seeing that just honestly just makes our job so much easier in the long run. So a positive trend.
Yeah. How about you, Heidi?
I could not agree more with that. I can't tell you how many companies I've worked at where an offering goes live and a quote comes in. I'm like, we don't even have a SKU for this. When did this happen? I don't know anything about this. so many times. So it's wonderful to be part of having that seat at the table and them knowing we're all trying to make this rocket ship go faster. And if you exclude these people, it's going to go slower. And so I love that. For me personally, it's the customer experience is first and foremost. So I love a 360 view of the customer. One of the first things I want to build everywhere is, okay, we can see who we want to sell to. We can identify our ICP, but how are they using the product? When are they using the product? What for, where, et cetera. And we have so many siloed systems. So bridging those gaps, building out a data warehouse, just anything to get that 360, which in tandem establishes an awesome BI program without even knowing it. You're kind of working both at the same time. And that's just the adoption for that. It's so much easier now than I've seen in the past. People know it's vital to growth.
Yeah. How about you, Justin?
I think two things that I think about. The one is again, looking at the systems aspect and how, so much that needs to go through the revenue funnel hits a system at some point along that funnel, is we've seen a stronger reliance on product management disciplines and bringing product management rigor to internal systems and internal teams. So where product managers typically work on externally customer-facing products, we've seen a transition of those roles to internal teams and functions and applying that same level of rigor and discipline. So, a backlog of requests that is valued and ranked by value to the business, clear communication to the business, accurate sizing of stories, and stories and requests that need to be built out. So I think that's been one of the key things, which is so crucial, which is why I think it was Heidi who said we're all agile. Yes, we have to be agile, and we've got to continue leaning into that product management mindset in what we're bringing to the business. That's the first thing. The second thing that I think is just going, again, was referenced earlier around the topic of definitions, is we're all just working with data at the end of the day, is what it feels like. And so that the discipline of data governance is becoming more and more important. And it's and there are so many facets to that field, but I think RevOps is central to the establishment of a data governance culture and the implementation of data governance frameworks, because it's we've got such a weird mix of data coming from products, actual systems that we're selling, logs, humans interacting in Salesforce, emails being sent out to customer, etc. And to be able to report effectively with true insights for the business that the business can trust, and that are actually going to give us insights that we can do something with, we've got to have a data governance mindset, a data stewardship mindset throughout that, that revenue funnel.
It's so funny you talk about that. My team is putting together the first data quality strategy. To be honest, I don't even know what that is outside of our company, but it's something that we know that we have to drive because we own data quality. But honestly, the entire company should be owning it and responsible. We all put in data into all the different systems, but it's something that my team has identified, is that we need to track all the systems where all the data is coming in, how we're managing all of it, what our auditing is around that. And it's actually something that we're doing. If anyone has ever done something like this before, can provide any help on this, it's just something that we're trying to put together. It was like a 2-page outline, and now it's like a 50-page document. But that's something that is so important, and it all comes to us when people have questions. They're coming to my team, and we just want to have something that outlines everything that we're doing, and that's across, like, marketing's participating, finance is participating in this, and it's just so that we all understand all the data coming in, all the data going out, who's responsible for what, and the system of record. So it's funny that you talk about that. It's important. Yeah,
I really recommend a book that I've probably read now two times and dip into pretty often, and listen to the audiobook. It's a thin book, very accessible. It's called Non-Invasive Data Governance. And the principle behind it is that everybody is governing data. We're just not doing a great job of it. So the idea is that to identify, how are we governing data, and then formalize the process and bring accountability into that framework. But I think you're right. I think it's got to be central to the RevOps function.
Yeah. One other trend that I've noticed, and it's even come out of, meeting with each of you and with the folks that we've had involved in our RevOps roundtables. We actually emerged, we grew out of those RevOps roundtables, a Salesforce Architect roundtable. And it's really fun. The stuff we get into, it's, folks from SaaS companies that are the architects, and it's such an interesting role. And even Salesforce, so they had the CTA, and a lot of people thought about this CTA role. I think there are only a couple of hundred on the planet. And to achieve that, you had to get the systems architect and the application architect designations, which require a handful of certs each. Well, Salesforce has introduced now the B2C solution architect, and are now introducing what's been an internal designation to them for years, which is called an enterprise architect. And that enterprise architect, which is the combination of awareness of systems, data, and the business processes. I think that's going to be a sort of an interesting emerging trend as another role that we'll be talking about more within organizations. In fact, Justin, I think you have architects on your team. That's right. Yeah, and they're crucial. I think we'd be in trouble without them. Yeah. So something we haven't talked about is AI. It seems like 2 years ago at SaaStr, AI was the big topic. And it seems to have now surfaced in a lot of different tools. There's some bit of predictive across a lot of tools. Any thoughts, or I'm just curious of any use cases where you've embraced AI within your organizations?
The data scientist team that I work with are my best friends. We have many, many scripts that they put together, and genius little algorithms, things that I don't understand, but they can explain it to me, using data science and predictive analytics. And especially coming from a company prior to this, RapidMiner, I learned the importance of it, because BI is great. You can see the past, but when you have things like COVID hit, this is when you need data science. This is where BI loses its value almost, sadly, when those anomalies happen. So we use it for customer churn. We use it for product usage analytics. We use it across the board. And we have a roadmap actually of what we're going to do in the next 90 days to improve it even more.
Anything, Kate, where it's been useful in your organization?
So it's embedded in some of the software we use, like Gong is a software that we use, and it tracks calls. Like for our sales team, it can record calls, and then it can actually pull out information like competitor information or certain phrases and keywords that you put in. So we rely on that to help us. And then we use Gainsight for our customer success team, which has AI embedded in that as well. So that's kind of the interaction we've had with it, is more our vendors are providing, the AI for us.
Yeah, I guess, and it probably makes sense. Salesforce went down the path of trying to sell, sort of, buy this and you can, do your own analysis.
Yeah, Clary AI is fantastic as well for forecasting.
Oh, that's great to know.
Insight Squared is one that we use for forecasting, which is similar.
What was that, Kate?
Insight Squared.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, absolutely. And they've had a lot of nice changes in the last 6+ months as well. Well, great. So a couple more topics I'll share, and then we'll dive into some additional Q&A. So OpFocus, we have 3 events coming up in the next month. I've been hosting twice a month dashboard dojos. I think some of you that have known me knew that I spent a number of years living in Japan, and I visited a lot of really incredible dojos in Japan, and thought, why not get people of all skill levels together to just train on reports and dashboards in Salesforce. So it's not a BI tool, it's Salesforce reports and dashboards, but trying to help people get the most out of them. Right now, we're doing a 3-part series on formulas, which is like the Swiss Army knife of getting stuff done with reports and dashboards. So these are free sessions for anybody who wants to join. There's information on the OpFocus website on the events section for these 2 events. Our next webinar will be on March 25th, and we'll focus on optimize visibility and growth of your renewals with Salesforce CPQ. So that's one, if you're considering CPQ or using CPQ, you won't want to miss. So I hope you can join us for that. We also have 2 classes coming up. Next week, I'll teach my 5-day Salesforce Admin Essentials class. Kate, I was trying to remember if you were in that class a million years ago.
It's like over 10 years ago, I think, but it was a great class. I'm sure it's just as good now.
Yeah, I was also in that class.
It's how they got to where they are today. No, just kidding. That's great. Yeah, so there's still slots available. We'll conduct it virtually. We'll be running from 9 to 3:30 each day next week. And then March 9th and 10th, something that I've really enjoyed doing the last number of years is doing a 2-day hands-on report and dashboard workshop. So those are also on the OpFocus website. We're just to share, part of the reason that we have such a good time hanging out with Justin, Kate, and Heidi is that we're part of monthly roundtables, and it's been really meaningful. So the OpFocus team, we started these up, I think it was probably back in April, and they've been really meaningful. We have 5 groups meeting now. One of them is women leaders in ops that Kate's been part of. We have a group of VPs of Rev-Ops, a director of Rev-Ops group, a manager of Rev-Ops group, and there are some senior analysts and some first-time directors in that group. And then I have a 5th group of architects, Salesforce architects at SaaS companies. And each one of these groups has just been so meaningful. So if you're interested in that, please don't hesitate to reach out, and we can slot you into the next session. And those are meeting monthly. All right, so I think we had a few additional questions come in. So there was one question around the process of defining roles and responsibilities, and then more specifically, so for the Rev-Ops team, specifically between overlapping roles like sales and customer success operations. Example, forecasting renewals and post-sales reporting, both of which have commercial sales implications, but are focused on post-sales business. So I think this gets into how, teams, how departments get started and how hiring is done within departments. But if there are any advice that you might share on defining the roles and responsibilities within the RevOps team.
I could talk forever on this subject.
Okay, good.
I've had to do it absolutely everywhere I've ever gone because everywhere I step in, it's catch all and you can do this. I think it's important to remember what's the role they signed up for, and does that charter still remain? Is it still important? Has it changed? And also keep in mind what their growth path is. And for me, whatever the role is that's needed for the business, the responsibilities underneath it need to line up to it. So I could hypothetically have an analyst who all she cares about is the systems. And then you need to probably move that person to a different role because you do need an analyst and you need them focused on those things. So you just have to make sure the subset of responsibilities align with the title as well. And getting alignment from the org. So having one slide that says this is the team, this is what they're responsible for, each person, having that being your opening slide at every single meeting, because as we all know, you have to tell reps something minimally 7 times to get it through their head to remember. I think that's important too for reiteration.
Okay, any other comments on that?
So I would also just say that agree with everything Heidi said, but it can get tricky when that person isn't in your org, but lives in another org, but they work really closely together. But it's the same thing as you just make sure that you work closely with that hiring manager to make sure that, the roles you have on your team and the roles that they have on their team are defined. And there's overlap is to really make sure that there isn't, or at least this is how they're then going to work together, and the checks and balances. So if someone's reporting out on churn for a specific area, but your team's responsible for churn overall, is that there is, there's collaboration there and checks so that when we're reporting up, it all adds up together and, you're not showing 2 different sets of data that doesn't ultimately tell the same story. So.
Okay. We had one other question. So Richard asked, in terms of roadmap, are you also looking at taking a broader approach to the RevOps for those teams that are mostly SOP focused? Do you see RevOps building out to include MOPs and CISO ops responsibilities?
Well, firstly, need some explanation on those acronyms. So
yeah, I'm sorry,
so
Richard. I didn't
MOP is
justice.
Maybe MOP is marketing ops, and what is the other one? SOP, sales ops.
Yep.
Success ops too is in there.
Okay.
Yeah, marketing ops. Yes, thank you, Richard. I'm sorry, I butchered the. Just got this little itty bitty font on my screen. Sorry about that. Marketing ops, CS ops. So do you see RevOps building out to include marketing ops and CS ops responsibilities?
Almost.
It's a great question. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was interesting when, I remember Dana Tyrion while he was leading their global ops practice at SiriusDecisions, talking about the rise in RevOps, and, he shared a stat of the LinkedIn job titles just shooting up that have the word RevOps in them. Sharing that SiriusDecisions was saying that this included marketing ops, sales enablement, and client success ops. I think in reality, it hasn't moved that quickly. I think some of the departments have been hesitant to let go of their ops people because they feel if they do, that things won't get done, their needs won't get addressed. Is that something politically that the 3 of you have had to grapple with?
Yes, particularly with marketing ops. I actually think CS ops, channel ops, alliance ops has never been a battle or friction. They're like, please take it. It tends to be with marketing ops, at least from my experience in the top of the funnel, because quite frankly, it's a little bit different worlds where you're talking about leads, not transactions and pipeline and upsells. It is a different expertise, but I do think as long as the alignment is there. I mean, I meet weekly with our head of marketing ops, and it's the yin to the yang. I made sure I interviewed with that person before I took the job, because if we weren't going to agree on the outcomes and things we wanted to accomplish, it would make no sense for me to join. So as long as you establish the rapport, and as Justin said earlier, just communicate everything you will do and what you won't do. I love that you said that. It'll be fine.
My old boss, my CIO from Carbonite, I would sometimes ask him, I say, shouldn't this person be in your team? And he would say, you know, I don't try and fight to get anybody on my team. He says, if it's natural or right for them to be on my team, it's just a matter of time until it happens on its own, or somebody else suggested. So I think that the same mentality probably applies to this evolution of a RevOps team or RevOps function, is that when it makes sense, you know, you're ready and waiting, you've got the gap, you've got the capabilities, and the right people come on at the right time. I think it's always tricky to try and land grab for functions and roles prematurely, especially in an evolving title, let's call it that way. But that's my own opinion and my old bosses.
Yeah. Say, Kyle, we had a question about the registration link for March 25th. Maybe, is that up on the site now?
That will be up by the end of the day today.
Okay. Well, that's great. Justin, Heidi, Kate, thank you so much for spending the time with us today. This is really awesome. It's so much fun to spend the time with you and talk shop like this. And especially while 2 of the 3 of you are out on the road, which is something that most of us haven't done at all in a long time. So we hope to invite you guys back at some point. This is certainly popular. Thank you again. And thank you to everyone who's joined the session today. We hope to have you back on March 25th for our next session on renewals and CPQ.
It's a real pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Kyle.
Everyone.